Morning, everybody. Andy here again, day 53. I thought I'd better check that because I got it wrong yesterday. It's like that, isn't it? 53 days worth of videos, and the whole thing's scrambling our heads in lots of different ways, isn't it? Anyway, I put the figures down below. Yesterday's daily deaths, 384, so it's levelling off, hopefully. The total now, 33,998, very close to 34,000. And here in the UK, this is the first day, because Wednesday, a lot of things changed. On Wednesday, we were allowed now to go out and do unlimited exercise, drive unlimited amount of miles within our own country to exercise and to go to other places, etc. Still lots of places that aren't open, shops, all that time. More and more are opening all the time. Funnily enough, we just been for a little walk down on the seafront, and we noticed like a beachside cafe that's just opened because it's out of the way. Whether it's legal or not, I really don't know, but I hope it is because they can enforce social distancing there. They're not in the way of anywhere else. They're not on a path or anything like that. So it's you can go to it. It's, as I said, it's open. So that's the sort of changes that are coming. But with those changes, obviously, comes potential problems because people now can go anywhere. I mean, and I know that a lot of the national parks, a lot of seaside resorts and towns, etc., attractions, if you want to put natural attractions, are worried this weekend because it's the first weekend that people go out. It isn't a bad weekend. The weather's not maybe it's great, but it's not bad at all. It's not going to rain, so people may well take this opportunity to get out there and to take their families to the seaside, to the national park, and go for a walk and all that type of thing. But the trouble is that although we may well be staying alert and all that sort of stuff, a lot of the places don't necessarily want people to come into their communities, and Hastings is one of them because I didn't realise, but saw yesterday the statistics that Hastings apparently has the lowest infection rate for COVID-19 in the country, in England. I don't know if that's the UK, but certainly in England, and I find that mind-blowing. Obviously, somewhere it's got to have this accolade, if you want to call it that. Now, obviously, I can't remember what the figures were for the actual amount of known diagnosed cases, but as we all know, and I know people who live here who've had the coronavirus, COVID-19, and they've never been tested. They've been diagnosed with it, or they know they've had it because of all the symptoms, the classic symptoms that they've had, but they haven't had a test, so therefore they're not part of those figures. That will be the same everywhere, obviously, so, you've got to believe the fact that Hastings does have the lowest infection rate in the country, which is something because then you start to think, well, wonder why that is, because, the way that it's gone, obviously we're not a tightly packed community like a big city like London, which is one of the reasons that it's been such a spike there, and that makes total sense. Everybody can see that. People are packed together on transport and everything like that. Whereas we aren't. Whether it's because we've got more fresh air because of the sea, I don't know. We are notoriously hard to get to through public transport links, and obviously there's hardly any trains running at the time. I know that's the same everywhere. But the train links, the transport links aren't very good. The roads to us aren't very good. We've always been stuck out in the back of beyond in some ways. And I quite like that. I quite like the fact that we're hard to get to because it makes people who do come here maybe want to come here more than other places. So let's go to the seaside. Where should we go? I want to go to Hastings because I love Hastings. Not I just want to go to the seaside. I don't really care where it is, so we go to Brighton instead. No offence to Brighton, but it's a lot easier to get to from the capital, etc. And also we're notoriously a deprived area, partly possibly because of those other instances as well, because of the transport and everything. If we were a better off area, maybe the transport links would be better. The two do go hand in hand to an extent. But we haven't, we haven't had those cases. And whether we're behaving better here, I don't know. I mean, people are. I mean, I've seen it, as I've commented so many times in these videos. People are respecting the social distancing laws, or the vast majority of people. But that is probably the same everywhere that you've been as well. If people can, they are doing it. As I said yesterday, and as we found today, you exaggerate, go onto the road and everything to get out of the way. People say hello, thank you very much for doing that, and all this sort of stuff. But the councils are actually trying to stop people coming into their towns, as I said, and some of them are shutting car parks and that type of thing. And our local council have done that. They put up, obviously we want tourism. This is a tourist town. We rely on tourism for other parts of the year. But at this particular time, we don't necessarily want people to come here partly because, as I said yesterday, so many places aren't open. All the arcades and the attractions, the traditional seaside things aren't here. The fish and chip shops, most of them are open. The beach is obviously there, and the sea's there, etc. But it's quite a weird one, and a lot of the local people are the same. We don't want people to come here because we've got, this lack of cases. We don't want people to come from elsewhere and potentially spread them. I know it's the same in other places as well. I know down in the West Country, in Cornwall and Devon, they're the same. The Lake District are doing the same as well. We don't want people importing the disease, the virus, which is why we've closed borders and why we're not allowing flights in, because we don't want it to come from A, B, or C. So that's the same reason here. It's nothing against you. We certainly want to welcome you back. But one of the other points that's come out of this whole thing is this debate about common sense, because the government, as I said, have shifted this now from staying at home to stay alert, which means you can go and do these things, and they're relying on the goodwill, on the common sense of the common person to actually do the right thing. And most of us are trying to do the right thing. I've spoken about this a lot of time. We all need to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, I did the right thing. I was practicing social distancing. I was staying at home. I was obeying the laws, the rules of the lockdown as best as I could. But there's always going to be some that won't do that. So that's where the common sense argument, in my opinion, falls down. Yes, most of us are using common sense, and we will continue to use our common sense. We won't do stupid things. We won't drive, God knows how many miles to go and kayak off of a beach in Falmouth and then find out that you have to be rescued, as someone has done, and they've driven all the way from Leicestershire to do that, hundreds of miles. Now, that isn't common sense, and that is the problem. You can't legislate for everybody, because there's always people that will let you down, and that's why, in my opinion, the governments have to legislate. They have to put rules in place and say, no, you can't do that. At the moment, as I've said so many times and got rather agitated about it, it's still too woolly. We've been too woolly all the way along. To use an analogy about the common sense thing, but there are always people who won't obey these. That's why we have laws. Because if you think about it, like theft and murder or whatever it is, it's common sense. It's sensible decency that you don't do those things. But some people will, which is why we have laws to stop them doing it. Otherwise, I could walk into a store, pick up a television and walk out, and someone would go, what are you doing? Well, no one's told me I couldn't. I know that's an extreme example and nitpicking, but it's the same principle, ultimately the same. Not everybody will obey by those common sense rules. It's a pity that they don't. You'd have thought that would be the way that people would do things, but unfortunately they won't, which is why sometimes, not all the time, which is why sometimes you do have to put things in place and say, no, you can't do that. You can't go there. You're not allowed to do that. And that's why people are picking at the government at the moment, because they're not making it, it's still not 100% clear in some of the things. It certainly wasn't at the beginning anyway. Yes, I would much rather we all use common sense, but unfortunately, not everybody does. And that will always be the case when we're through this at the moment, and it's been the case in the past anyway. So don't travel to places, just use your common sense, please, because no one wants to see us legislated against particularly, but sometimes you have to be. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there and have a cup of coffee. I think Julie's out there making it at this very moment, and I will hopefully speak to you tomorrow. So stay strong, stay safe, and I'll see you on day 54, I think it is. Goodbye.